Gretchen Wallace. She's the founder and president of Global Grassroots, an international organization working at the intersection of personal and societal transformation to catalyze the ideas of grassroots change agents working for women's rights and well-being post-conflict. Gretchen is a producer of the documentary film The Devil Came on Horseback, which was nominated for 3 Emmy Awards in 2009. She is also co-author of the memoir The Devil Came on Horseback, bearing witness to the genocide in Darfur, about her brother, Marine Captain Brian Steidel's experience as a military observer in Darfur. Among her many honors, she was chosen with her husband in 2010 as CNN Heroes working in Haiti after the earthquake. Welcome, Mrs. Wallace.
Hi. So, not so long ago, I was at a wellness center for a retreat, and I was sitting in the audience, and it was a rather large group, and a woman stood up to speak about the activity that we'd just been doing and how it had moved her. And she began getting quite emotional and began crying. And I'm sitting a few rows back from her, and I noticed the woman sitting next to her is getting kind of agitated. She's looking all around. She finally sees this box of Kleenex, and she grabs it, she pulls all these tissues out, she reaches up to the woman standing and talking and wipes her face for her. Of course, the woman talking is like startled for a second, she pauses, and then she goes back to speaking again, and her neighbor sits down kind of satisfied. And that was that. And I'm watching this and I'm thinking to myself, all right, intentions, good. Delivery, not so good. So if we want to live a life of purpose and meaning, if we want to make a difference, I think we need to go about creating change and serving others a little more mindfully. What is called for here is transformation that begins from within. And what I want to talk to you about is what I call conscious social change, something that's my personal passion. Conscious social change is a practice that is led by individuals or change agents that invest in their own path of cultivating self-awareness while simultaneously working to benefit the common good compassionately and mindfully. And most conscious change agents are also driven by a sense of inner purpose. So what I'd like to talk to you about today are 2 aspects of conscious social change, which is presence and purpose. So all of this work begins with the capacity to cultivate presence. Being fully present is having the ability to bring all of your awareness to what is happening in this moment inside of yourself, while simultaneously being able to focus on what is happening outside of yourself at the same time. This is being fully present. Many of us have experienced meditation, or we've gone on retreat where we have this sort of isolated experience of focusing on self-awareness. But what I'm talking about is presence in every moment, in every interaction, in the chaos and messiness of life. So here's 30 seconds of experiencing what that looks like. So first though, take a second, close your eyes if you are willing, or look down, and focus on what your body is experiencing right now. Tired, tension, just pain here or there, just notice. Now notice your emotional state. How are you showing up in this moment? Interested, bored, feeling fearful of something, whatever that might be, just notice it. Now notice your thoughts. Are you thinking about what's happening later tonight? I'm wondering if you said what you meant to say in your last conversation, whatever is happening, notice. Right now, stay in contact with all 3 places at the same time, body, heart, and mind. And now I'm going to ask you to open your eyes, lock eyes with someone else, and still stay in contact with your body, heart, and mind at the same time. And now ask that person, how are you doing this afternoon? And now answer the question, and stay in contact with body, heart, and mind. Okay, now it takes some practice, right? All right, so being able to be fully present inside yourself and outside of yourself, really taking what that person is saying, the answer from an authentic place of self, it takes some practice. Unfortunately, most of the time we're on automatic pilot. A study recently discovered that people's minds are wandering 50% of our waking hour. So, and we're not even happy when our minds are wandering. So why is this important? Well, it's the quality of our attention that defines the quality of our relationships and the quality of our engagement with the rest of the world. Once you learn how to cultivate presence, and again, this is a lifelong journey, it's not necessarily an end point that we're shooting for, but you'll learn how to do three other things that is, I think, really critical. One, you'll develop the capacity to endure and transform deep suffering, whether that's something you're experiencing or something that's being present in another. Secondly, you'll know then how to respond mindfully in a way that will make a real difference to others without disempowering them or creating harm. And third, you'll be able to more clearly identify your own unique calling or purpose. Now, the key to this entire approach is recognizing that transformation begins from within first. So let me tell you a quick story. The organization that I founded, Global Grassroots, seeks out change agents among some of the most marginalized women globally, including genocide survivors and war survivors in Central Africa. And we have what we call an Academy for Conscious Change, which provides conscious leadership activities, mind-body trauma healing, and social entrepreneurship skills to help these same women develop nonprofit organizations that will serve other vulnerable women and girls in their communities. So one of the conscious leadership practices that we teach is this. When you notice with this mind, body, heart, you notice an emotional charge arising, a rush of emotion, it can be irritation or awkwardness. You simply take 3 breaths, and that gives you enough time to pause and then respond in a way that will be more mindful and less reactive. So I share these practices with my students, and then they have opportunities to practice this within their own daily lives. And that, over the course of the weeks of our programs, I'll ask what experiences and insights they're receiving from these practices. And one day, one woman, this was during our Academy for Conscious Change in Rwanda, one day a woman raised her hand. She said, when I came to class yesterday, I cleaned my whole house, and it was spotless. And when I went home after class, I noticed my kids had messed up the entire house, and I was so furious. Usually, I just beat my children. But today, I remembered what you said, and I closed my eyes, and I took 3 breaths. And I realized I actually don't want to beat my children, I just want them to clean up the house. So I was able to stand with my eyes closed and say, this is what I want you to do, I'm standing here with my eyes closed until you do it. And you know what, they did. And I didn't have to beat my children today. Now, I was thinking, oh, this is amazing. But what was even more incredible was that this woman was on a social venture that was working on the issue of domestic violence. And so this simple act of taking 3 breaths transformed not only how she was going to be parenting her own children, but the way that she was going to engage couples in conflict and talking about not only domestic violence between the 2 of them, but the way in which they were raising their children as well. So we can see how potent self-awareness can be. And the unexamined self has, in many cases, been at the root of an activist movement that has turned violence or leadership that has been gained or sustained through oppression. But with mindfulness and presence, we can see what's happening within us. And we can see what's happening outside of us, and we can ask what is needed. We can respond as wisely as possible, and with this deeper understanding, begin to work on our own unconscious patterns. Now, the more we begin to work on ourselves, the more we recognize, yeah, change is kind of hard. And we might actually bring a little bit more patience and compassion to all the other people we're trying to get to change all the time. Now, in addition to presence, or in fact, presence serves us in finding our purpose as well. Let me tell you about a gentleman I met in the Sudanese, the Darfur refugee camps in eastern Chad. His name is Adam Musa, one of the most inspiring people I've ever met. He lived in Konongo refugee camp, home to 15,000 other refugees. And despite difficulty in this camp, he was a passionate educator and committed to a sense of purpose. He saw a chance to educate this captive population. And to him, he thought the one thing that this camp needed was a human rights library. And that if he just had a single light bulb, when sunset came and there was no electricity, certainly people would come to see what was going on when the light was on. And then he could offer lectures, he said, to combat the bad habits, in his words, of his community, including domestic violence and female circumcision and child abuse. Well, for many of us, this would be a grand idea, but being a refugee, that's kind of a very difficult thing to take on, but not for Adam. He was able to convince refugees who would stand all day in line waiting for their water rations just to fill up a small jug that they could use to meet all of their drinking, cleaning, cooking, and washing needs. But he convinced them to share some of their water rations. This is in a 109-degree desert. So that he could fill a small hole with water, making mud and building bricks out of mud. And he began building his human rights library with his bare hands, brick by brick. A few years later, some friends of mine visited the camp in the rainy season, before the rainy season had come, and Adam had a wall about 4 feet high. And then the rains came and the entire thing crumbled. But he went back to building his library, brick by brick, with his own bare hands. So conscious change leaders like Adam, who are driven by this sense of inner purpose, will simply not stop until they know they've made a difference. And it's this kind of purpose that enables them to endure unbearable suffering like 7 years in a refugee camp. And it allows you to inspire others around a collective purpose. Just imagine what it must have taken to convince illiterate refugees in a desert to offer their volunteer time and water rations to build a library. So I leave you with this. Each individual has their own unique set of wisdom based on their life experience. Each of you has a gift, a capability, a possibility that you know is driving you if you really listen. But it doesn't belong to you. Your job is to identify it, cultivate it, and offer it back for the sake of helping others. So ask yourself these 3 questions. What do you most yearn to do in this life? What is your unique wisdom from whatever your life circumstances are that you have to share? And what is your driving passion or purpose that would enable you to endure unbearable suffering? Go within, let presence and purpose guide you, and you too will create conscious social change.